we are going to start our panel section right now. And let's welcome our panelists. So we have 5 panelists. I will be the hostess. Let's first let every panelist introduce themselves. Start with Mr. Benya.
Hi everybody, I'm Bob Benya. I'm the President, Chief Revenue Officer and Board Director for 7 Stars Cloud, which is a NASDAQ-listed public company. We're virtually in a kind of a startup mode. The previous entity that we took over was involved with video on-demand programming distribution into China, and it didn't work out very well. So we kind of took the company over, decided that that wasn't a really good business model, and we said we should get into fintech. So that's what we've been doing for the past 6 months. And we've had a great start, and I'll be happy to share more info with you during the networking session. My background is actually in infrastructure. Broadband, video. We started up with high-speed internet back in 1999, 1998, roughly. I was involved with the whole startup of that operation for the cable industry, and prior to that, I was a cable operator for many years, both in America and also in Scandinavia. So that's the background.
Hi everyone, my name is Christine Chen. I'm the President of North America of Deeper & Chen. Deeper & Chen is an AI computing platform driven by blockchain. We have dual headquarters both in Silicon Valley and back in Shanghai. We're registered in Singapore. We can chat more after the section, and we would like to share more information during the section.
Hi, I'm Sarah again from TPS.
Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan from Red Pulse, and Red Pulse is a tokenized research ecosystem covering China.
Hi, good evening. So we have entrepreneurs and investors, researchers, also blockchain enthusiasts. So thank you so much for having me here today. My name is April, and I come from Bitmart. Bitmart is an emergent digital asset trading platform, which was launched on March 15th this year. So I work in Bitmart as a compliance officer, so my main duty is to make sure that Bitmart stays compliant in all the major markets where I operate. So I'm also a licensed attorney in New York and New Jersey states. So currently my main focus is to study the current regulations in cryptocurrency industry, especially for ICOs and for the exchange operation.
Okay, so in order to give our audience some opportunity to ask questions, I will only have 3 questions for our panelists. The first one is that we often talk about blockchain for its financial feature, financial nature, but blockchain as an underlying technology is more than that. Like, in your opinion, what can be another killer app built on blockchain?
Well, I would say, any major industry like healthcare, financial industry, presentation, insurance companies, any major organizations that have very high administrative costs, lots of expenses tied to, receivables, payables, staff, taxes, you name it. And blockchain really simplifies a lot of things and makes things a lot more efficient. So name a big industry, and you're gonna be able to use blockchain to solve a problem.
Okay. So as you can see, there are many creative and new applications of blockchain across a wide range of industries. Besides business application, I don't think the killer application has yet to materialize. We at Deeper Chain, we think blockchain technology is a perfect vehicle for AI computing platform to solve the two biggest issues of blockchain of AI industry. First one is you can lower the cost by sharing the computing power, share the data, and then AI models on blockchain. The second one is they can secure the data by sharing the data with a smart contract. So different chain, actually you can think about, it can reduce the cost, just the AI companies to pay the cost at a fraction of the cost. It's also a network for AI and data companies to connect. There's a lot of data is lost without anybody answer the question, and there's data never be shared or rarely used. So cutting back the cost on the hardware allows company to focus on innovation and their technology. Yeah. So I think the killer app will be the AI plus blockchain. In a broader sense, if there's an application that can decentralize the superpowers such as Facebook, Uber, bank system, or AWS, it will be the real usage.
So besides finance, depends on the timeline to materialize. I think closer to being mature, it could be content monetization and IP related things. For example, some of the game producers start to put their future IP onto a blockchain-based crowdfunding platform where fans can choose to fund which project they can build and also get a share of the revenues in the future. So, and for this type of market, they actually have a lot of fans, but right now the funding is relatively monopolized the supplies. So I think, together with digital fingerprint that can better track how those IPs are used and how much money actually people make from those IPs, this could be an interesting use case that's closer to being realized. And in the far out, for example, in healthcare, using with very private ways of computing, as you mentioned, doing better AIs about things such as human genes, personalized medicines, etc., could have a very big impact. But healthcare is a tougher field because there's way more regulations, etc., and also supporting AI is also a big topic. But I do think that's possible over long run, and also is going to be a big category.
Well, I also tend to agree that there are quite a lot of applications for blockchain across industries and across healthcare, across logistics. I think any sort of application that requires a degree of verification for the information that's being stored and shared across a network. Blockchain, obviously is a pretty interesting solution for that. But I do want to highlight, I think, a key challenge. We talked about a roadmap getting to an actual killer app status. And for the most part, we're not there yet. Why are we not there? My feeling is because there's a disconnect between what rests on the blockchain and the real world. I'll give you an example. If you look at healthcare and you want to track people's health, on the blockchain, maybe their health records. Well, there is, of course, the records themselves, the information itself, but how does it get onto the blockchain? If it's done by a doctor, well, that doctor has the potential for making a mistake. And if it's not done by a doctor, it could be done by a device. IoT is a pretty big industry nowadays, but what if the device malfunctions, right? And taking it to another application here, similar to healthcare, I suppose, but the idea of estate planning. If someone decides to create a digital will where it determines who gets what at the time of death, right? So how do you distribute? It's a little bit morbid, I know, but how do you distribute your wealth amongst all your children and your grandchildren? Well, how does the smart contract know that you've died? I mean, are you going to be wearing a smart device and it's going to measure your heartbeat, and then when your heart stops beating, then the smart contract is activated, and then all the funds are distributed? What if you're just taking it off to go take a shower, right? So there's that disconnect between the blockchain world and the real world, which is an underlying reason for why we haven't really achieved a killer app status yet.
Okay. I think basically our speakers have covered basically all the things I can think of. So I didn't have any technology background, so my understanding of blockchain technology might be very superficial. But I just heard Christian and Jonathan talk about smart contracts. So one day, some guy I work with told me someday smart contract might replace lawyers. So that's terrifying for me because I'm a lawyer. So yeah. Also, what's very impressive for me is how blockchain technology facilitates people's alternative banking solutions and also asset management system. Like, I work in Bmart, so I'll just take Bmart as an example. We are currently trying to add a very exciting new feature to our platform. There are over 9,000 platforms currently and even more different kinds of tokens. So different platforms list different tokens. How to manage your digital assets is a tough question. So currently with this whole networking trading system, I think users can trade across the multiple platforms with one single click. And thousands and thousands of transactions can be processed at the same time, which is very impressive to me. Yeah.
Well, I know that's a very open discussion question. So next question is going to be a little bit more specific. Like the SEC had a lot of debate and also had a lot of new rules, especially for exchanges. Like you have to register with the SEC now for this ATS license. And also, SEC said that recently they said under the US law, every token is considered an equity token. I also wanted to ask our guest, what do you think about that statement?
Well, our company is growing through acquisition and partnerships. We're not going to be hiring and managing armies all over the world. We're going to JV with everybody. And our focus has been on AI, cloud-based, blockchain, and alternative trading systems and platforms. So we bought the majority interest of a company called DBOT, DBOT, Delaware Board of Trading. And you can go to dbottrading.com and trade. If you have OTC securities or other types of securities that are eligible to be traded over the platform. It's SEC and FINRA regulated. So we really embrace regulation. We understand how important it really is if you want to survive in the financial world as a multinational company. But our strategy is basically we have a stack, we have code that allows us to do a lot of very interesting things in the financial space. One of the areas that we're really intrigued about is real estate. Especially REITs, R-E-I-T, apostrophe S. REITs are very interesting. It's about a $3 trillion business, $2 trillion of which is traded through various funds, Vanguard, Fidelity, BlackRock, you name it. But there's about $1 trillion that are not traded. They're illiquid. And so what we want to do is to provide the digitization, securitization, and tokenization of those kinds of assets and fractionalize them and sell them and enable trading through our network, where we have an alternative trading system, DBOT. We have other partners like merchant bankers and stuff, and we have a stack in the middle, software, that enables all of these things. It's all blockchain based.
Since like the regulations are either outright banned or focused on IOC and exchange at the current state, I think the later approach is more appropriate due to I think many regulators, they don't truly or fully understand the regulation, and the regulation actually can stifle the innovation, and then regulation can also stop the company from moving forward. So I think what we are seeing about this emerging technology is just the tip of the iceberg. We need to understand this industry more and to make sure it's already being disclosed its full potential. So when that happens, we can say the regulation, we can do this way instead of that way. My personal opinion.
So I actually tend to agree that tokens are security. I don't think they are equities, because by definition, what is security? Security is a form of certificate for some type of rights and interests. And there are different types of rights. And most of the tokens nowadays do represent a certificate for ownership, right to use, and oftentimes some type of right for future benefits. And that's by a broader definition, that is the definition of a security. So, but whether we should use the same security law framework to regulate this new type of security, I think that's a different question. I think there is a lot of concerns for good reasons about the being overregulated, etc., etc. But I also hear relatively balanced opinion within the government itself as well. I actually read the entire notes for the congressional hearing by SEC in February, and it's actually quite balanced. I think Clayton actually said he takes the perspective as a father and saying that even if he is the chairman of SEC, his son, who is a teenager, was never excited about finance at all until his high school classmates told him about Bitcoin. And he said, so my attitude towards this is very similar of being a dad. On one hand, I'm afraid my kids will be taken advantage of because of the misleading information and scams. But at the same time, we should not dismiss millennials' enthusiasm for this new type of financial products. And I think that's a very nuanced attitude. In China, the central bank's chairman also said our approach towards crypto is dynamic. We want to see more pilots before we made up our mind on how to regulate this. So I think there are reasonable and rational voices within the governmental organizations as well. And I hope those type of rational thinking and reasonable regulation will surface over time.
Generally speaking, I think regulations are helpful to an industry's development, especially relative to where we are today. We are such at early days in terms of the cryptocurrency environment that I think more regulations are critically needed. And you just need to look at previous to having all of these countries ban cryptocurrencies and ban ICOs. What was, generally speaking, the large majority of the projects and companies that were doing ICOs, they were not robust, they were not based companies that had fundamentally solid business models driving their need for fundraising. A lot of them were frauds. A lot of them were basically just mechanisms to raise a whole lot of cash and run away with it. And I think many of these jurisdictions saw that for what it was and moved very swiftly to ban these ICOs across the board. Now, unfortunately for those, and very much so the people on this panel, that have viable projects and that have viable companies that aim to use the idea of tokenization and blockchain as part of their business and as part of their underlying technology, that's problematic because we get pulled in, we get categorized much the same as all these other fraudulent companies, all these other bad apples, and it basically restricts us. It limits our ability to use the technology and also create a successful business model around that technology. So having more clear regulations that define what is allowable and what's not allows us to operate in much more clear space and allows us to operate in a way where there's more certainty as to what we're doing. Is it okay? Is it legal without having to continue to operate in the gray?
So basically, I agree with Jonathan that I heard lots of people complaining we have too many regulations right now. But the truth is, I believe the regulations are not enough in the way that regulations are not clear enough to give people guidance. So to answer Nicole's question, whether tokens are actually securities, for me, the answer is depends. It always depends. So, except SEC, we also have other regulators. We have IRS, who said tokens are properties. They have FinCEN, who said they're currencies. We also have CFTC and SEC. So, it's actually very interesting that legislative bodies remain silent when different regulators are struggling to dispute with each other, try to grab some piece of cake try to bring this new whole industry into their own territory. So my concern is, I think the fundamental question needs to be answered by the legislative body. If we cannot pass a law to properly identify whether tokens are commodities or securities or currency or whatever, we need to have the judges or court decisions to give us clear guidance. And I believe in March there is a federal judge, Winston, who has ruled in his decision in banking CFTC's finding that tokens are actually commodities. So that's official law. So that is actually persuasive to me, because if you ask yourself a question, if you buy a token and SEC said it's a security, but traditionally security always represents security interest. So it's either adapted to the company or you have an equity interest to manage the business, to control the company. So what did you get? That's the question, except for investment return. That's my concern too. I think our investors also need to be educated instead, besides those regulations for the ICO issuers and the exchange operators. So currently, actually, I heard people complaining, but the truth is, I rarely see anyone actually ask me. I heard lots of questions like, is ICO even legal in China or US? But instead, people don't ask me how to legalize ICO. ICO as a form of fundraising is actually legal. Just you have to abide by the security law, 1933 Securities Act, which only asks you to register. So our regulators actually are very lenient in a way that CFTC only asks you to implement a self-certification system. And also, SEC is not trying to kill this whole industry. They are not smothering those startup companies. They are making a case-by-case decision. They are not just killing all those companies who do ICO because they fail to register. They are killing those companies because all those promotional materials they have contain fraudulent information, misrepresentation, misleading information, which are basically, a scam. So they're trying to protect investors and also trying to make our industry healthier. So just welcome the regulations and do some research or hire a professional office to help you with those compliance issues. That will be very easy.
Okay, my last question would be, what do you think blockchain will be by the end of this year? Because right now it's April and we have many months to go. But in this industry, everything happens very, very fast. Maybe just overnight as a new different world. So what do you think by this end of the year blockchain will be?
Well, I think there's a lot of momentum. Unfortunately, there's a lot of confusion, though, as well. And I went through this when we were starting up broadband. People really didn't understand what it meant. Everybody had dial-up. It was very, very frustrating. You get kicked off. It was very slow. And we solved a big problem. But as we went to all these small towns and introduced the product, it was called Roadrunner, which was a great name. People just didn't really understand it. And it took a lot of education and evangelism. And finally, we kind of hit an inflection point, after the first couple of years. Technology was sort of clunky, and we were kind of patching it together to force a solution, if you will. And then ultimately, we developed more elegant solutions like USB. You can self-install your high-speed internet. Back when we were starting it, 2 technicians had to show up at your house. And we literally had to open up your PC, which caused our attorneys to have great, they were very afraid of the implications of, let's say, a movie director has a film on his PC, and our PC technicians cracks open the PC, put in a network interface card to connect with the data center to get high speed, and all of a sudden his hard drive gets blown up. What's the legal situation with that, right? So anyway, yeah, I really think that, we talked about a lot of very interesting things here. We had a great panel, great moderator, great forum. There needs to be a lot of evangelism and education. I think that's really very, very critical because, if you talk to an average consumer, right, who's reading a newspaper, and you say blockchain, what do you think they say? They say Bitcoin.
Yeah.
They think it's Bitcoin. And that's exactly the opposite. Bitcoin is going to be a fractional aspect of blockchain. That's what's missing, is the evangelism and the education about the power of 62 lines of code, right? And how you can customize it and really make it very powerful and important, similar to what we went through with taking dial-up and going to broadband, and now broadband is like oxygen. People can't live without it. We should do a broadband deprivation study and see how long people can last without it. I don't think it's going to be very long.
I think blockchain technology can draw a parallel to the internet in early 1999. So besides, when we were still using the dial-up, we hardly can predict how this technology will, the internet will strongly impact our daily life in modern days. So just say internet itself in a decentralized flow of data and information, it allows the technology to grow. It help the industry to go to another level. So it's really hard to say now, this blockchain, where this emerging technology, where the way will go. And I feel like at DeepBrain, we just use artificial intelligence to help blockchain become smarter. Although there's so many laws, as we say, we have to surpass, and then we need to improve a lot of things. Like the process of ICO need to figure out it first, right? So I think end of this year, I think people still trying to figure out the blockchain is a commodity or is a currency or just a security. We will figure out better usage moving forward. But for now, we still need to focus on the regulation protect when you are an investor?
I think three things. First, more people will be able to tell the difference of Bitcoin and blockchain. Two, more protocols, more work on different type of consensus models will emerge. And the third thing will be further globalization of this industry, because we already see people moving from jurisdiction where there's stricter regulations to places that's more friendly. And because of the decentralized collaboration model of this industry itself, this is going to be one of the most globalized industry that we have seen in most decades.
Well, I think for 2018, by the end of the year, we're still going to have the issue of education and understanding of blockchain and the difference between that and cryptocurrencies. But there will be a pretty major shift, I think, and I would separate that shift between two different categories, and one being the consumer category, and how do they view blockchain, and how do they view cryptocurrencies, versus corporates and versus institutions that use blockchain as an application within their businesses. And I think, similar to some of the ideas that were shared on the panel just now, we are going to get to the point where, similar to the internet, there used to be a time when everyone talked about it and said, wow, I've got to get my business on the internet. A whole lot of talk, not a whole lot of action, because people didn't really understand what did that actually mean. They just said, if I talk about the internet and maybe put .com at the end of my name, everyone is going to think I'm smart and everyone's going to think the company's going to do really well. That's sort of the phase we are in right now when it comes to blockchain. A lot of companies are trying to get into that space and say, yeah, we're doing blockchain, but not necessarily doing it. But by the end of the year, I think companies will actually start doing it. And it's going to be more of an afterthought as to whether companies are actually using blockchain, because it is going to be so pervasive and it makes so much sense for most, if not all, companies to implement blockchain in some way, shape, or form in their business. So it's not really going to be a big deal. Everyone's going to be using blockchain. By everyone, I mean these corporates. When it comes to retail individuals, it's going to be more of the same, with one key difference. And it's tied into the comment I just made, which is, companies that understand blockchain and start using it are going to use it to great success. And for a lot of these cryptocurrencies that have pitched a vision, and most of these companies have done just that so far, ours included, I have to readily admit, for those that can execute and actually deliver on that pitch, they're going to succeed. And for those that have not, by the end of the year, they're going to fail, and there's going to be a shakeout. Of the 1,500 cryptocurrencies that we see nowadays, most of those are going to disappear. They may still kind of be, around there, lingering around, very, very low price points from a fiat basis, but all but dead. And for those that actually can deliver on their promise and show that they actually are using blockchain, using cryptocurrency to build a new type of ecosystem, a new type of business model, they're going to do great. And I think those are the ones that are going to work in a similar fashion to existing corporates, existing incumbents, in being able to successfully use blockchain and create value as a result of doing so.
So actually 2 days ago, in the other event I joined, there was one audience who actually asked me, seeing all those regulations, do you think is blockchain dying or is cryptocurrency dying? So my answer is, first, I don't think blockchain will die because everybody can see it's changing our life in all the ways it changes. So also for Bitcoin, which is always tied up with blockchain technology, I don't think Bitcoin will die, even though people are discussing that Bitcoin is not as good as some newer coins like Ethereum or Litecoin, or even some newer coins. So I think it's been almost 10 years since we first heard the name Bitcoin. And it actually changed the way people think and changed the way how startup companies raise capital. As a compliance officer, since our exchanges always receive all kinds of listing applications, and I have seen so many crazy ideas. They are so crazy that I didn't know how to accept them. But the thing is, I think this is just one thing, one good thing about ICO and cryptocurrency is that you can always find some other people who are just as crazy as you. Just imagine someday when your dream will come true, when those crazy ideas will come to reality. So I don't think ICO will die. I think ICO will become a new form of fundraising for startup companies as long as our regulators will keep it open-minded and lower the threshold for the companies to do fundraising, and as long as our developers and issuers and startup entrepreneurs are trying to welcome the regulations. And I think that's actually the future of our life. Nothing will die. One thing ever happened, it never dies. It will exist in history forever and change our life.
So now we will take questions from the audience. If you have any questions for our panelists, please raise your hand. Okay, so you can just stand up.
Yeah, I actually have a couple of questions. One is that apparently the whole panel is sort of like in this NEO ecosystem. So can you guys clarify like exactly how you guys are related to NEO? Are you like a smart contract on it? Or what else, and why you chose NEO rather than another one like Ethereum? My second question is, seems like the whole panel is also very like bicultural, like, you know, China and US. Can you say a little bit about like, you know, do you think the two communities will converge or diverge, or how it's going to evolve over the next few years?
Okay, first of all, we have 4 projects from NEO, which is Epiphany, DeepBrain, and PDS and the Red Pose. So we can only ask questions to these 4 panelists. And also, we can start from this, but just mind the time, we have only 1 minute for each panelist.
Yeah. So DeepBrain Chain, as I mentioned, is an AI computing platform driven by blockchain. We use NEO as our platform. We run the smart contract on top of it. Yes.
So we are partnering with a new project that the original team of actually so there's another project called Ontology, which is actually launched by the same founding team of NEO. We're using the ID system of that infrastructure in the PTS project. But PTS for the public chain part is not based on the NEO chain, which is the first project of the foundation.
So Red Pulse is the first ICO on the NEO platform, and I think it was actually a couple of months before the second one came on board, and really honored to actually be on the first to go. Now the reason why we chose NEO, for us there's several, and the first being from a market standpoint, the team all originated from China, and now that the infrastructure and technology has of course gone beyond China's borders, you can't consider it necessarily a Chinese platform any longer. There's oftentimes a misconception there. It's a global platform, and they have key developers that spans the globe, especially from City of Zion, who we very closely continue to work with at Red Pulse. And so it's that alignment in terms of where they originated from and where a lot of the team sits, where my team sits across Hong Kong and Shanghai. It was just very easy to connect with them and be able to meet with them in person. The second key reason is their technology, which is much more mature compared to other platforms. And specifically, you were asking about NEO versus Ethereum. Ethereum's been around. They're the pioneer when it comes to smart contracts. Vitalik did an amazing job creating that innovation there. But there's a couple of downsides of Ethereum. TPS, transactions per second, scalability, and Bitcoin, for that matter, in terms of efficiency. And I think there were a lot of great lessons learned by the NEO team in being able to incorporate those aspects that did make sense and continue to make sense as part of their blockchain infrastructure, but to address some of the challenges that have arisen in those previous blockchain infrastructures, and they've done so quite effectively. So that's probably the biggest reason that we decided to go with NEO. And third, they're just great guys to work with. I like the guys. I see Johnson at the back of the room there. He's actually the first Neo guy that I met way back when, and it was great to meet them, and they were all very, very helpful and super nice guys. So was really excited to work with them.
Yeah, I think you guys should look into ontology, which is also a part of the Neo ecosystem, but it's not Neo, the chain. But this new project is super exciting, and especially if you're doing ID-related things and data exchange, etc.
I think Neo is going to be very happy that we are branding them and bragging about them. Epiphany is also built on Neo. We made this decision based on 3 reasons. First, Neo is running a really good community, and also the reputation of Neo is really high, no matter it's in Asia or America or any other region. And the second reason is because right now there are more than 50 applications built on Neo, and all those projects are very good. And as an exchange, we wanted to list as many good projects as we hope to. And the third reason is because actually we are talking with points, because we have this new feature called the brokerage. We wanted to have some benefits from Neo, because this digital identity feature that probably will benefit us. So these are the 3 reasons that we chose Neo. And for your second question about this mixed culture and about the blockchain industry in America and Asia, so I think Robert is the expert.
Yeah, we're a global company. Our headquarters are in Beijing, Shanghai, and we're opening up U.S. headquarters imminently and building up our team. Again, we're kind of a startup. Bruno Wu, who's the chairman of the company, CEO, I'm the president. Bruno's Americanized, but we have a lot of business in China. We're going to be doing a lot of business in America. We're going to be focusing on 20 to 30 different territories to essentially drop our stack of software off. We don't want to get into the local regulations and all those things. What we want to do is to build up a global partner trading network and essentially do rev share, no barriers to entry, all success-based, and enable the various exchanges and banks around the globe to access new revenue streams that they currently don't tap into through the technology that we're going to provide. So that's the business model. We're going to be global. But right now, we get a lot of business in China, Singapore, but America is coming very, very fast. And I think I alluded to the REITs, the untradeable REITs, the illiquid REITs is a very, very large market that we want to tap into as one of our first priorities, and that will be a global. As soon as we get up and running in America, then this goes out everywhere.
Okay, so due to the time, we won't be able to take another question, but we can move our discussion outside of this room. And if you have any questions for our panelists, please ask, but in a private way. Thank you very much for coming here and joining our event. And I hope that in the future we can have another event like this again. Thank you.